Hello. So, welcome to section 2 of A Question of Getting Them There. Now, I'm hoping I will get this up shortly, but considering how long it takes to get all these up, and considering this is the second recording, because the first time I tried to record using the new webcam, and rather like my good colleague and friend Drakenfennel, who was having interesting fun with technology, I spent about 20 minutes talking, thinking everything was going. It was blinking at me, so all was happy. Then when I checked, it had only recorded 16 seconds. So today I have two issues. One of my favorite shirts has shrunk in the wash, so I currently look about twice the size I am. I probably am slightly larger because I've been doing a lot less gym recently. Can't think why I'm under lockdown. And that isn't working properly yet. I will work on solving that. It works as a camera. It's solving that. It's getting it to work properly. I think if I adjust the settings, it's going to be fine. But we're back using the phone to record section 2. And because of this, I don't think section 3 and section 4 are going to be uploaded till later. Later today, Saturday. Hopefully that'll be done, and then I'll be able to start uploading and recording the Anglo-Japanese relations 1902 to 1942. 40 years, which go high to very high to, getting back to what are we looking at today? Well, today is going to be Group 2, ships for landing craft. So we're looking at landing ship stern chute, landing ship gantry, landing ship dock, and landing ship carrier. Yeah, all are going to be good, but I'm going to start off by clarifying something I said in the earlier message, in the earlier section, and something which I think needs to be clarified, because the Shinsu Maru is more than likely the first landing ship dock which is built. It's used by the Japanese, and it's excellent. Now, it's conceived in the 1930s, about the same time as other navies looking at, but it's kept very quiet, and it's not really that well known about. In fact, most reports I look at are very sketchy. Basically, Allied intelligence was focused far more, well, American and British intelligence at the time, were focused far more on battleships, aircraft carriers, submarines, and cruisers than they were weird auxiliary ships. Considering how much time the Royal Navy spent on weird auxiliary ships, perhaps that was a short-sightedness of them, but they didn't go into it. So, what does this mean? Well, this means that whilst they're the first to claim, I think that they are the sire of landing ship docks in amphibious warfare as it's modernly conceived, is, I think, post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is one of the legal fallacies. Just because it's after, it's because of. Allies were considering docking ships in the 1930s. They didn't build them, they didn't see a need for them, they didn't have an active war going on against other forces in China and all sort of these things to actually motivate them to build it. When war did come, they did get to it, and they did build it. Which means, did they build it? Did they know about the Japanese system at the time? No, not really. Not enough to start building any copies of it. In fact, in many ways, as I write here, they only really recognized the Shinzo Maru for what it is after they have their own. And then their LSDs, which they're starting off, LSDs, they're looking at carrying landing craft tanks. And I'm not just talking about the small ones, I'm talking about big ones. They're talking about carrying big ships. In many ways, the Shinzo Maru is far closer to the modern system of carrying smaller landing craft than many of them, which it did, and of how the British and American LSDs would evolve, especially like getting this with the use of amphibians. So it is first generation like them, but it's not the generation zero. There isn't really a generation zero. There is sort of two traditions, and after wartime, they look at what the Japanese experience was, they look at their own experience, and that forms into the newer generations which come and start to appear in the Cold War. But also amphibious warfare changes into the Cold War, so, you know. Anyway, it's on to landing ship stern chute. Fun times. So, landing ship chute. Well, landing ship stern chute. The LSS. Pardon me. Okay, so prior to the Third World War, the Third Sea Lord in direct naval construction in 1930s, can't think who that was, were looking at whale factory ships as potential vessels to carry LCMs and deploy them on operations. Of course, they had a stern ramp. And what comes along, what does the Royal Navy seem to gravitate towards? Well, a whole load of ferries. Why do you gravitate towards ferries? To provide so much of your amphibious warfare capability? Well, they're stable, they're fairly big, they're fairly easy to modify because they tend to have quite large empty spaces in them. And in the case of two vessels, the L and the R, their propellers are quite far apart. So you can build down a stern ramp. And they already have rail tracks inside them, which are perfect for moving LCMs around on. So, that's the idea. You can move them around inside, you have a little gantry. You can store 11 LCMs in there, and you can get them up really quickly. It's an amazing idea. Unfortunately, the ships come with a few problems. One, there's the fact that once the trolleys are off, getting them back on is an interesting one, and where the trolleys go and reloading the LCMs. It's fun. It's doable, but it's not exactly a quick process. Two. How do I put this politely? The modifications, because of where fuel was stored in the design, took already short-range vessels and made them even shorter range, which meant they could only be really used for popping around the UK and for D-Day. And they were used very successfully for delivering landing craft around the UK, and they did that for many years. But then when D-Day comes along, they had actually in a locomotive sort of, I think it's called a locomotive bridge. So they can still launch the LCMs, and they can recover them. But, and here's the thing they're also going to do, they can also carry trains. And the reason it's useful to have them back into their original role, to be able to carry engines again, is because the Allies have spent the last few years destroying the infrastructure in Europe to soften it up, especially for the amphibious assault, on opening a second front. The trouble is the Allies are just as dependent upon railways for long logistics as the Germans are. So, yeah, you need to do a rapid rebuilding of the logistics network. Need more trains. These get them across. But no. Yeah, the whole reason for building these ships is because the landing ship infantry cannot carry enough. Okay, you can't carry enough landing craft to rapidly get the troops ashore, especially when you're looking at the operations they're looking at on a global level. The trouble is with the LSS is it's really not enough to do the job. Oh well, on to next. So, landing ship gantry. Okay. So what you want to imagine with these is, if you've ever seen a container port, the big gantry cranes which load and unload containers onto those ships, they are basically what these ships are designed around. These ships are mobile gantry cranes, and they've got two of them, and they're double-sided. So they can drop landing craft off either side, they can pick things up, they can send them out, they can disgorge all their landing craft in 35 minutes or less. Really less, but it's theoretically they can do. And they're just essential. Here, though, is the option. The fact is, they are built with very much long range in mind. Okay, the lesson's been learnt with the LSS. Okay, we need to build something long range. So what do we have available? Well, we have these rather good fleet oilers being built for the RFA. They're called Dale class. They were ordered in 1936 and they'll be in construction until 1941. But there's 18 being constructed over that period. So 18 fleet oilers. Some get converted into gantry ships. And they are quite well armed and they carry these landing craft. Now the theory is the reason you take oilers is because they can replenish ships underway and hopefully extend the range of other amphibious ships. But as time goes on, their ability to carry oil is actually reduced as they take on more crew. They have space converted to carrying personnel for landing craft, personnel as in troops. And then actually when they're looking at the Far East deployments, they actually decide that they're going to borrow one and turn it entirely into a freshwater carrier. Because if they're looking at going to war against Japan, and this was always in their mind, especially when towards the end of the war, there was no guarantee that it was going to work against Japan, the nuclear weapons. They were still very much thinking about it, deploying it, and readying for it so they could carry out the retaking of Singapore and then on to the invasion of Japan after they'd opened up that route through Southeast Asia. Having fresh water was going to be critical for any amphibious operation, especially any major one in the Far East. So it makes sense. But actually, the LSG's time to shine came earlier than that. They were used in many of our operations afterwards, but their real time to shine comes very early on in the war, in an operation which is often forgotten. Operation Ironclad. Now, I'm not going to get into this massively, mainly because I'm planning on doing a whole video about it later on. Either towards the end of May, or maybe into June, because I might do the, as there's been such a response to it, the sloops at war as a video in May. So, reason I wanted to go through this was because the reason for you taking Madagascar, and I just want to cover this because there's often people go, well, it was no point, it was off the route of march, there's no need for it, Okay, well here's the reason for it. You have got US and British supply routes to Australia, to India, to the Gulf, all going past Madagascar. You have the Japanese Navy operating in the Rangoon area, and more on that, you have a force there you're not sure you can rely on. So the French could become suddenly far more pro-German, or they could get invaded by the Japanese. Either way, that's not good for your vital supply routes. We have enough trouble fighting stuff through the Mediterranean, we have enough with war going on in the Pacific and in the Atlantic. We'd rather try and keep the war as condensed as possible in the Indian Ocean. So Madagascar has to be taken, and that's what they're doing. Now, here's some of the fleet. They're pretty. And so what I've done is I've worked through the top ones to explain what they are. And I haven't started on the bottom ones, but some of them are just troop ships. Okay? And troop ships, I'm not sure if they're all exactly troop ships, but I think they are from my reading. But troop ships are pretty much merchant liners, or merchant vessels, which have just minimal conversion, if any. They might still be carrying boats rather than LCAs on their davits, all sorts of things. Okay, these ones definitely have had some work. Sobieski, I have read some descriptions of her as a LCP LS, which I can only figure out means landing craft personnel, large, small. And I'm taking this from the place where it's put. I know there are other ships which do manage to have that designation. It means something different, but in this case, that's what they're claiming. It's the same size as an LSIL. It's fitted out as an LSIL is, broadly speaking, so I've lumped it as an LSIL. Because that makes sense to me. Winchester Castle is both an LSIL and a headquarter ship. So she's an infantry landing ship, a large one. But she's actually having some space taken up for the headquarters of the combined force to, be used as that. There is an LSIH along there. Presume they were really, really shorter ships, which they were, the Royal Ulsterman. And apparently that combined Winchester Castle and its number 5 commandos and 2nd East Links is going to assault Red Beach. Hope they've done their upper body exercises. You then have Derwentdale, the LSG loaded down with motor landing craft. Yes, it's one of Henderson's oilers is there, and it's the gantry. It's not the only of his oilers there. There's also Easdale down as a fleet oiler down below there. And you have an LST, Baccarat, one of the first of the LST ones. Haven't got into them yet. They're going to be in the next video, which is going to be recorded. Well, let's be honest. This is well after, it is well into Saturday morning, so probably later today on Saturday. But it's interesting. This is the force which is going for Operation Madagascar. The Operation Ironclad, the invasion of Madagascar. This is not one of the biggest invasions which they mount in the war. In fact, in Operation Grouping, I probably put it with Iceland. There is actually more combat than in Iceland, but in terms of size of force and what you're trying to do, proportionally, it's Iceland. It's in that bracket. It's not a massive force, yet look at how much equipment they're taking with them. Look at how much they have to take with them. And this is the real difference as amphibious warfare goes on in World War II. After commando operations, after all those things that are going on, this is what's having the big impact. The fact that you need to not only just have landing craft, which are being found out in 1924, if not before then, in First World War at Gallipoli and other operations. This was where you found out that this is where you got finding out that to not only support the landing craft to get a proper amphibious operation going, you need proper amphibious shipping. Madagascar is pretty much one of the first examples where you get a whole fleet of proper amphibious shipping going, and it really does go to town. Anyway, on to the next one. Landing ship docks. Now, Harry gave a bit of a discussion those at the beginning, but let's go over this. So the specification is dating to September 1941. Dates too. I know. Basically, it's a response to worry about the tank landing craft not coming online in enough numbers or being fast enough to deploy. In other words, the LSDs are designed to carry 2 LCT 304s, 3 LCT 5s, or 36 LCMs. They're designed to carry huge landing craft, the really big ones, the landing craft tanks. This is not a landing ship dock as we'd understand it today. Okay? This is a ship carrying very large, 900 odd tons vessels. It's supposed to be designed to carry all sorts of things. It's a pretty major operation. It is in the heritage of the modern vessels, San Antonio class or the Albion and Bulwark, but it's just as disparate from it as in many ways the Japanese one is, because it's a fusion of those experiences which comes into it. And actually a similar scheme had been proposed in the 1930s, but there wasn't a war happening, so no one needed it. No one was thinking, how are we going to get a whole load of landing craft anywhere? You didn't need to. Next slide. Now, landing ship carriers. I know. I haven't done LSTs yet. They're going to be the next video. The next section, section 3. But I'm looking at LSTs now because, God help me. And they say necessity is the mother of all invention, but this is some necessity gone a long way. The idea is that we need to get our landing craft out everywhere we're going. And the landing craft tank 5s especially are critical for that. So the idea is you stick the LCT 5 on top of your ship, of your LST, and you push it over the side. And after a 10-foot drop, it hits the water and it chugs off. Now this does work, but in the nicest way. Surely you're sending the thing into battle is enough without you making it go through the terror of a 10-foot drop first. It's just not fair. One of the surprising facts that comes out, and I'll be getting into this more, although the LST was nicknamed the Large Slow Target, and this is the Encyclopedia Britannica saying this, only 26 of the 10,520 American-built vessels were lost to enemy action during World War II. LST ranks with the aircraft carrier and submarine as one of the most significant ships of war. Well, along with the aircraft carrier, they apparently carried their own deployable assets in terms of an LCT. It was used operationally, and it was critical to getting the LCTs around the world. I am going to admit that. I'm still not going to claim I think it's a brilliant idea. It works, it's used. No. There's got to be a better way. Build more LSTs. Anyway. Picture time. So, you have a Glenroy up top, LSI. But more what comes through all these pictures. The huge industrial looking gantry ship, the rudimentariness of the davits, of the LSIH, is that they're making the best of the technology they have available. They're not really inventing anything new, they're going with what they have. They're using it maybe in a new way, but it's mostly being over-engineered and quickly applied. The closest thing to any kind of pre-existing plans for conversion they have is probably the LSIRs, okay? Because they have plans for converting civilian ships to troop ships, using the davits for LCAs, loading LCMs on there. All these things are pre-existing plans. There's something they've done in World War I, convert liners to troop ships. Troop ships is something they understand, okay? The rest are adaptations of that concept, and of the concept growing to deal with the fact that this is the generation of mechanized warfare. They're having to land tanks, they're having to land an incredibly large number of vehicles, and a complex support and logistics system to support the modern infantry and modern forces they're fighting. Plus the speed they've got to get them ashore, because they're far more likely to be facing an opposed landing than previous times. This is what they're dealing with. So, next pictures. We have an actual launch from a landing ship chute, which looks fun. But it's further proof that when you hear someone on internet or anywhere saying, wow, there's this great new technology where we are launching, and as force multiplier, we're going to be launching small boats down the ramp off the back of our ship. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a real revelation. You can sit there and go, no, they've been doing it for a long time. They're actually doing it before this as well, so this wasn't new. It's been around a while. It happens. The gantry, again, these big industrial looking things, they remind me in many ways of a very famous bridge in Newcastle. Actually, it's the box girder one. Nah, I'm kidding. Tyneside. But also, the Forth Bridge, these sort of things, they're heavy duty ironwork. Then you've got the huge landing ship dock. And finally, you've got the LCT-5 sitting on top of an LCT-2, LST-2. Please, no one tell me that is a... It works. I know it works. So that, therefore, by definition, if something works, it's got to be a good idea. But it doesn't look right. Okay? Right then. What we're going to be looking at in the next episode, as I said, is the LSTs. So we've got the Mark 1s, we've got the Mark 2s, and we have the Mark 3s. But that's going to be in the next video. Take care, and see you soon.